Hi everyone, my name is Marcy Berger and I'm the Member Services Coordinator at AFSA. Welcome to Don't Boil the Ocean, a new approach to speeding up technology implementations presented by Steve Kramer. This presentation is a part of AFSA's Business Partner webinar series, which allows industry experts to share timely educational topics directly with AFSA members. For more information about the series or how to become a presenter, feel free to reach out to me following today's webinar. A few housekeeping notes. To ask a question, use the question box on the side of your screen. The slides and recording of today's webinar will be available later today on AFSA's website in the Webinar Resource Center. Finally, you'll receive a survey after the webinar is over. Please take a moment to complete it. Your responses help us fine-tune the program so we can target the issues that are important to you. A bit about our presenter. Steve Kramer has more than 20 years of experience in the e-commerce and payments industry, having been in charge of product at such companies as Western Union and ACI worldwide. Steve holds a degree in computer science from Virginia Tech and has spoken on the topic of bill payment trends at numerous conferences and webinars. And now I'll turn it over to you, Steve. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. Appreciate everyone's time. Hope this is an informative webinar for you, but the plan today is, as you see the title, Don't Boil the Ocean, an approach for trying to speed up your technology implementations and some strategies you can use, some ideas of how you can start working on these to transform your business. So a few things we'll do on the agenda here today. We're going to kind of take a look at what's out there today, what's been going on in the industry over the last year. It's, as we all know, been a year and a half of some interesting times, some interesting change. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then a little bit about why this is so hard. Hopefully what I'll say to you there, you'll all be nodding your heads virtually. I won't be able to see you, but going, yep, understood, yep, get why that's hard. And then we're going to kind of get into it, what the introduction is, some examples and case studies that we'll give you, real world examples of clients who've done this before. And by the way, all of the case studies that I will present to you there are available on our website if you want to see in-depth reporting on those case studies as well. And then we'll end up with some final considerations, what's going on in the industry, and then if time permits, open up for a bit of Q&A in terms of what we're doing. So that's kind of the setting the table there. Let me just give you a little bit of background about just who we are, about who PayNearMe is, for those of you who don't know. This is the small commercial, right? We've been in business 12 years, got billions of dollars that we process annually. We've got over 5,000 customers. We do a lot in cash as well as electronic. At cash, we have more than 27,000 retail locations where we can collect cash payments, 7-Eleven, CVS, Family Dollar, that sort of thing. And then, the charts along the bottom, right, of all the PCI compliance and all the other compliance and that we go through, as well as some awards that we've won as a company. Okay, we'll stop there. End of commercial, right? Let's now get into the actual presentation. So, as I said at the beginning, 2020. A challenging year, I think, for all of us, right? A lot of change going on out there, a lot of things I think a lot of us didn't expect. I don't think anybody here, a year and a half ago was going, there'll be a global pandemic, sure, right? Surprised all of us. But what was interesting about that is it really took what a lot of us knew all along, right? That there are businesses out there and companies out there that really need to do some kind of digital transformation and kind of help to digitize their consumers and give their consumers the tools they need. And 2020 kind of really, forced or reinforced that on a lot of us. And as a result, you can see what happened here, right? 91% of businesses engaged in initiatives, in digital initiatives in the past year. I don't know who the 9% are that didn't. I can't imagine that anybody wasn't doing this, right? And it really is, when you start thinking about digital transformation and digital initiatives, a balancing act, right? Of how much of this is really more of an optimization versus how much of it is really a transformation of the business, right? It's kind of evolutionary, revolutionary versus incremental approaches. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we get into this, right? And then you can see not only were businesses engaged in this, but consumers were changing their behavior, obviously, right? They were all changing their behavior just in terms of not leaving the house, but then, their interactions with their businesses changed. 35% started increasing the use of online banking. and a similar number started doing more with digital wallets. We really saw an explosion of the use of digital wallets in the past year. Everyone's been kind of waiting for this, right? Digital wallets have been out there for a few years. They've kind of been creeping along, growing incrementally over the years. And then really 2020 in the last year really took off there in terms of digital wallets. So what do we mean by digital wallets? Well, we mean a couple of different things, right? The wallets, the normal digital wallets you expect, the Apple Wallet, the Google Wallet, that sort of thing, but also things like QR-based payments were a preferred choice of the majority of respondents. It really surprising. We joke about everything old being new again, right? QR codes, 10 years ago, people were talking about those and how much QR codes are going to be used. They really took off again in 2020. For those of you who may have done some outdoor dining in the past year, you saw a lot of that being used, right? Where your bill would just come, the waiter would just put it on the table with a QR code, you could pay right there. Again, that's a great example of a digital transformation of a business that probably wasn't expecting to have to do that in the last year, but then did. It was part of what they had to do in order to survive and what they had to do in order to meet their customer demands. So not only did we see consumers and businesses change, right? But digital services really reaped the benefit of what happened in the last year. Just a few of the headlines that you can see here. But if you look at the different fintechs and neobanks out there, some of these are companies you knew, some of these are companies you maybe not even had really heard of, and their valuations changed dramatically. The number of consumers they started working with just jumped dramatically. It was really such a transformational year for a lot of these companies in both the fintech and neobank space. Major changes. If you weren't keeping up with the headlines, we could have filled this page with dozens of these type of headlines, right, of the digital businesses that were really changing here. So we could really take this presentation in any of a number of directions, but the way we're really going to take it is more in the payment space. We can talk a lot about why, but if you just look at the right in terms of the global companies that are doing payments as what we call payments as a service, which is basically taking pieces of that digital transformation and enabling consumers to be able to start using them. And you can see just the explosion of them there on the right. You had some early adopters, some Stripes and Braintrees, but then really there was an acceleration there between the coronavirus and the digital wallet growth and all of that payments really started to become that kind of first step in terms of digitizing a consumer, right? I mean, because this is obviously the way the consumer interacts with all of these businesses. And for businesses that bill on a weekly or monthly basis, this is a way that consumers are interacting with that business on a consistent level. So it makes sense, right? That payments were the way that started that digital transformation. If you started, those consumers are starting to demand digital payments, the businesses are starting to offer the digital payments, that's that first step of a digital transformation of the consumer. And it really unleashed, as payments as a service started to come out there, it really kind of unleashed a whole world of competition and innovation. As people started saying, you know what, maybe I don't have to, boil the ocean, name of our webinar, right? But I don't have to build the giant thing. I can now start taking these services and start offering them to our consumers and just maybe having individual services out there. Banking was a great example of this with banking as a service. The large banks out there could take, work with some of these payment service providers, small companies, and enable that and start giving their consumers some of what they're looking for right away rather than waiting for the big bang, right, for the big solution. So this all sounds great, right? Hey, digitization and we should do all this transformation, so let's just do it, right? Well, unfortunately, innovation's hard. There's a lot of reasons why companies struggle to get here. Anything from, that top left, like limited dev resources. Every company I've spoken to, we always joke, like, oh, sure, you have all these engineers just sitting around waiting for more work, right? Of course not, right? Everyone's got priorities. Everyone's already got a roadmap, already has plans out there for what they want to do. Maybe you don't have experience in that particular area, or in the bottom left there, right, your systems are legacy systems. They're just not meant to work in this kind of real world digitized real-time method. They're more of a legacy type platform. So how do you get there, right? How do you actually make that transformation, not only for your business, but for your consumers, if your back-end software isn't ready to work there? And then there's, a lot of other things going on, right? If we're going to do this, how are we going to train our staff? How are we going to roll this out to consumers? And what about all the other projects we're running, right? I've already got a roadmap laid out there, and somebody says, no, we need to make a quick change, right? We need to have digitization of this piece. How are you going to balance those two pieces? And then the bottom right that we always joke about, right? We all have day jobs too, right? You already were doing something before. So how do you get there? And look, when we talk about these various boxes, it may not just be engineering resources that we're talking about, right? There may be other pieces. There may be pieces that are, your back-end system's upgrading their platform. In the middle of that upgrade, how are you going to do a transformational piece? Or maybe, the marketing department, the training department's already got a whole training schedule set out. How are they going to roll out new pieces to your staff? So numerous reasons here, right, in terms of why innovation gets to be so hard and what you have to balance in terms of that innovation. But as you start looking and going, yeah, it's just how do I get past this, right? I really want to do this. Innovation's hard, but you know what? Waiting's even harder. You've already got customers out there that are asking for this, and not only asking for it, because that's one of the keys here. We often hear, well, our customers aren't demanding this. No, they're not necessarily demanding it. They're expecting it. We talk all the time about, Gen Z and millennials and folks in that age bracket. And when they come online and go to do work, it's not that they're expecting things to be in real time, or it's not that they're demanding things to be in real time. They're expecting it, right? This is the norm. They're in the PayPal, Venmo world, right? Where things should always just move right away, right? When I press a button, why doesn't it just go? Why doesn't my friend see the money pop up in his account immediately? I want to apply online. What do you mean I can't do that? And what do you mean the funds are going to take 2 or 3 days to hit me? And you may have the other piece too, right? Well, I live on my iPhone. That's how I connect to the internet. I don't use a computer to surf. I do it on my phone. And by the way, I do everything with Apple Pay too. So when I come to your website and you don't have Apple Pay, well, wait a minute. What do you mean you don't have Apple Pay? That's how I live my life, right? So it's a whole different mindset to think about, well, are consumers demanding this? It's not even a demand. It's an expectation. It's what they think is supposed to be there. So real world story, worked with a company that started to say, okay, we want to start working, we want to start doing a digital transformation. So tell you what, we're gonna take 2 or 3 months and we're gonna do a customer journey, and we're gonna look at that, and then we're gonna then take that customer journey back and we're gonna turn it into business requirements. That's probably another 2 or 3 months. So yeah, in about 6 months we'll be ready to start working on this. And there's a problem with that, right? Well, all right, we'll just take 6 months and we'll plan this. What can happen, right? A lot. If you look at what happened in 2020, yeah, there was a little bit of a change, as we all know, in consumer spending. You don't want to be on either side of that chart, the downward or the upward, in a planning stage and not be able to react to that, right? So we're on the right there, right? Bitcoin, what's the big deal? Oh, wait, a little bit of a change in the value of Bitcoin in just a very short period of time, with companies like Starbucks going, yeah, we'll take Bitcoin. So if they're starting to do that, well, why aren't you, right? Many of you may have heard about a company called Plaid. Visa was going to buy them for $5 billion last year, and that sale fell through. And one of the reasons it fell through was a few months later, they were valued at $13 billion. And that's just in a few months. So you can see when you say, okay, we're ready to go here, but it's going to take us 6 months to be ready, you don't want to be Mr. Jefferson here and come back 6 months later and go, oh, what I miss here? Right? Did anything change in the industry? Yeah, stuff probably changed, and it changes really, really fast. But of course, you have the other problem too, right? You go to your boss and you go, okay, we need to do this, and they're like, great, let's do it with the same people. You go, wait, what do you mean with the same people? Oh yeah, and the same resources. Same resources? Yeah, it is. Do what we do. Just do it agile or something like that. You go, well, how am I going to do that, right? How am I going to do this new technology or this new transformation that's happening because the industry is changing? And how am I going to do that with my same resources, my same legacy systems, my same staff? We hear this all the time. So long-winded way of getting to our topic, right? So what do you do? So there's a methodology that we talk about, the crawl, walk, run methodology. Look, this is not new, right? This is really something that's been around for a long, long time. Of how we do that, how you get there. It's newer in this industry though, because in a lot of times when you're doing technology projects, it tends to be much more what they call a waterfall approach, right? The thing I mentioned earlier. I'm going to take 6 months, I'm going to build up all our requirements, and then I'm going to throw them over the fence and say, okay, technology, build it, right? And that doesn't work well. And so we're going to go through each of these and talk about what a crawl approach could be, what a walk approach could be and what a run approach could be. And as I said earlier, we're going to kind of use payments as the backdrop for this, just to give you an idea. And that way we can also give you some real world use cases of how companies have done this. So again, long-winded introduction there, but let's get into the meat of this now. So what is crawl, walk, run, right? It's really starting to prioritize your business and prioritizing what your needs are. How do I practically start looking at a giant problem here that, might take 6 months to figure out and carve it up? So maybe on a crawl, you look for those quick wins, right? Where's my real pain point? What's a low touch area where I can really find a quick win? So, for example, maybe you just need capacity. You just brought in, let's say you're a lender and you just bought a new lender. Your portfolio doubled overnight, but your staff is about the same. And you've got a lot of phone deal that you're dealing with. A lot of people calling in, but suddenly you have the smaller staff, but now twice the portfolio. How do you deal with that? Maybe we can just quickly turn on something like an automated system, an IVR, that just can handle that front end. And I can then move on and deal with a bit larger problem that I have this much bigger portfolio I'm dealing with, right? So that would be a good example. We'll go into some real world cases there. On the walk, now that you're kind of crawling, now what can I do? Maybe I want to integrate a little bit more with systems. Maybe I want to put a little bit more customization in there. Maybe I need a larger project that's starting to work on that. And then on the run side, that's really that long-term goals, right? That's really how do I reach that final goal of a fully integrated solution? Maybe it's after I've already got this first two already working, I can start diverting development resources as they wind down, and I can really start fully branding, fully customizing, building this exactly the way I want to. But the cool thing is I've already got some wins under my belt. I already know where I'm going here. So that's kind of the general idea. Let's kind of go through each of these in some detail. So part one, right? All right, we know we need to do a transformation. We know we need to do something here. But I don't want to wait 6 months, a year to get going. I have an immediate need. Maybe I have very few resources on my back end. I think that's something we can all agree to, right? I think everybody says, yeah, I know that one, right? And a few resources. So what would be the characteristics? What are you really looking for there in kind of a crawl approach? Well, really at that point, you're looking for a turnkey solution, right? Something off the shelf. But when we say off the shelf, we'll talk about this in a moment, right? We don't necessarily mean it's off the shelf, you're going to plug and play and it's going to look like everybody else is off the shelf, right? There needs to be some level of configurability there because, your business isn't just like somebody else's business. So what you're looking for is really something fully turnkey, off the shelf, and yet configurable, something I can just connect to, set up a little bit and just go. From a data standpoint, it may just be kind of a batch type approach. Like, look, we'll deal with real time later, but I can just get going with a batch approach of just dumping data over, receiving data back. I'm going to have limited configurations, but I need something there, but probably no major rules behind it. But really, you're going to target that single pain point. I'm coming in here. I know I need to do a transformation. Where's my single biggest pain point? Is it staffing? Is it that I can't have my people talking to customers as much? I have to segment my customers and figure out how to drive those. Is it cost? I really want to drive people more towards a self-serve approach. Is it fraud? And look, how can I just get something out there that starts dropping my fraud rate while not adding more friction to my consumers, right? So there are a number of different approaches you can take on the crawl side to get you there. So as a real world example, right? Case study that you can find on our website, Affiliate Mortgage. So these folks came to us and, they were only, as I said, they were a phone mail shop, right? That's how they tell payments. And it was really starting to put a strain on their internal resources, right? They were really struggling to keep up as their portfolio was growing at a terrific rate. How could they keep up with that? So they needed something like, can we just do a quick rollout? Can we just get something up and running? So literally in less than 2 weeks, we're able to put up a quick website that was just a quick turnkey approach. Yeah, it had some configurability for them. At the same time, they went, you know what? At the same time, you're going to be dumping us a file of payments too. Let's make those not just the stuff that are coming on the website, but we want the retail as well. So you know what? But it's all going to come in that one file. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to do a major project to do this. So in one fell swoop, they were able to enable cash payments at over 20,000 retail locations. They had a website they were standing up so they could drive their customers to self-serve and said, look, we'll just deal with a daily file, just dump the data to us, we'll get it into the system of record. That's a very small project. They already do that today. So just adding another file or a file they're already receiving, making a small change to it was a tiny little project. And that's why in 2 weeks, they went from literally no web front end for consumers to make a payments to a quick and dirty, here you go. Here's your quick front end. You can now start taking payments. And you know what? When I talk to a consumer on the phone, maybe I can go, hey, did you know you can go to this website and make your payment so that the next month when that consumer knows they have to pay, they won't call up, right, or mail in. They'll come in and self-serve. And now affiliate already saw savings, costs dropped. They were able to start serving a larger portfolio with fewer staff. It was a win for everybody all the way around. And again, encourage you to read the case study online. So just that's a real quick example. We've got other clients that have done similar things. You know what? I've got a call center that's being overwhelmed. Let's just stand up a lot of them are just good customers calling in to pay. Let's just stand up an IVR in front that just says, you want to pay, come here, press 1, make a payment, put in your information, you're done. And that now consumer never has to speak to your call center agents. And again, a way to drive that self-serve, lower costs, and make it easier to serve a growing portfolio. All right, so we've retrieved crawl, right? Now what's next? So you've got something running. But you may need to do a little bit more. You may already have completed a crawl, but you may need more of a two-way connection between. I don't just dump me data. I really need to have a two-way system here, right? I need to be able to feed you data. You need to be able to feed me data. And you know what? I need a little bit more configurability than what you've got in place, right? It's going to be a little bit more than just throw a logo on there, stick it up there, get me running. I need a bit more than that. So this can be kind of a combination. There are turnkey solutions out there in a number of industries, but similar, they could also be slightly embedded into your system. Maybe not fully embedded, maybe just a link out or something along those lines, or it's an iframe or that kind of approach, but you can start embedding it in. There is going to be some engineering or development environment usually required in order to get here. And then the other piece of this is you do need, as you're doing a larger project on here, some kind of rollout plan, right? How am I going to get consumers understanding this, and how am I going to get my individual staff? Whereas we saw that a crawl approach that got up in as little as 2 weeks, this is usually more a couple of months of work, right? It could take work on both sides of the house. It could take some internal development staff may need to roll off another project. Maybe it's the crawl project in order to be able to work here. So again, this is very theoretical. So let's get into a couple of real world examples of this, right? So Turner Acceptance, company that, again, lending type company, and what they really needed to do, they were growing in gangbusters. It's terrific, but they needed to try and increase self-service payments. And at the same time, though, they want to try and reduce delinquency. I think that's fairly standard for a lender, right? But they want to try and find some innovative ways to reduce that delinquency with their consumers. So what's the way to do that, right? So the solution was, well, can we do some kind of automated messaging, right? And again, think about it that way. If it's just a messaging approach, but then you drive the consumers to either A, something that exists, or B, something that you built in that crawl stage, now you can start building on top of what you've done before. Right, so they started in the crawl of just, I'm just going to send like a message or two out to my consumers, trying to remind them, standard payment reminders. Hey, Mr. Kramer, your bill is due. But as we got into the walk approach with them, right, now what can we do? Can we start customizing those messages? Can you have more messages? Maybe Steve is, a good payer, so I wanted to send him a note 30 days ahead or a week ahead, and I know he's going to good, but maybe, Bob over there, he's not a good payer, he's in danger of coming in delinquency. We may want to send him a different message, and maybe that message is a week before and a day before and the day of, just to remind him and try and drive that delinquency down. And so what they did was they rolled out, 8 separate messaging tacks in both multi-language to try and see how that would work and to test it, and saw their delinquency rates drop and self-service adoption grow by over 20% in just a 2-month period. So it was just a great way for them to, again, build on top of that, messaging approach and start saying, yeah, how do we start? We did a crawl, we got something up there, we did a message or two. Now I want to start doing more. What's my next big pain point? In this case, it was delinquency and self-service. And how do I do a larger project there? And can build even from there in terms of what these rules can be, right? And are giving them the real capability to say, you know what, let's have some more complex rules as the walk started continuing, right? So maybe it wasn't just based on the date. Maybe it was based on the date they were due and how much was due. And maybe those messages were different to those different types of consumers. The ability to do kind of A/B testing there, right? You can start thinking about all kinds of different approaches as you hit the walk cycle of what can I try and what can I deliver for those consumers, again, to solve the next big pain point that you've got. All right, so now you may have completed a crawl, you may have completed a walk. We see a lot of customers, especially in 2020, when we were all running so fast on this digital transformation track, of who really stopped at the walk. Like, you know what, whew, got there, we've got customers, we're changing them more to a digital approach, problem solved for now, let's move on to something else. But a number of companies said, you know what, no, that really was just the first couple of steps. We really want to take that next approach. We really want to do a much bigger kind of enterprise level solution. And this is also a case where maybe you want to control all aspects of the customer experience. You don't necessarily want a turnkey solution anymore. You want to own it. You want to control it. Obviously, it's going to get much more heavy on your engineering resources if you're going to control all of the interactions, if you're going to control all the front ends instead of using a turnkey approach. Because you're going to probably be communicating with this company via API calls, real-time solutions, real high level of customization and configurability back and forth between yourself and whatever vendor you're working with on the digital transformation. So a much bigger step in the direction, which is again why a number of companies in 2020 did stop at the walk, but there were several that went through to a run as well, right? They were like, you know what, as long as we're here, as long as we did the crawl and the walk, let's continue, let's make 2020 or 2021 that year of digital transformation for our business. So a good case study of that, a very large leading non-prime lender who came to us, and one of their problems was they really were having issues both with delinquency and fraud and self-service. It was kind of all of them combined. They're going, how do we deal with this all together? So working very closely together on terms of once we got the crawl and once we got the walk working, what are the configurabilities? What business rules do you really need? Do you need to worry about consumers who are in a payoff scenario? Do you need to worry about consumers who are in a delinquent scenario? Are they different? And of course the answer is yes, right? And do I need to handle different rules for those different types of consumers? A consumer who maybe bounced an ACH with me, do I want to treat differently from a consumer who's worked multiple months in a row and has kind of come out of a payment plan? And so we worked with this non-prime lender, created more than a dozen rules around every payment experience. Now, nothing the consumer would see unless they hit one of those rules, right? So the idea was keep the friction low, but at the same time, let's protect the business. Let's protect the business from both a delinquency and fraud rate, while at the same time trying to drive further into self-serve. And so what happened? Right, so we worked with them, and these rules we actually were tweaked over time. So a good example of the run scenario where you're not even done when you think you're done, right? You cross the finish line and go, oh, we made it. We got that large project finished. Well, no, not necessarily, right? You may want to then start tweaking that and seeing, oh, what did this change? Let me start tweaking that behavior. And what you see on the right is one of the metrics that was used, right? What happened to their payment rate? Well, that went up in terms of the number of self-serve payments they got. What happened to their ACH return rate? One of the metrics we were checking on them, that went down. And that's having both of those happen at the same time was an amazing experience. They actually reduced their ACH returns by 50% in a 6-month period, while the portfolio and the number of payments actually grew. Quite a change there. And really the way that can happen is by using a solution that can both be configurable, as you see on the left. Let me start tweaking those rules. Let me start modifying them, maybe doing some A/B testing on the different business rules, while at the same time on the right, this is a run solution, right? This is really where I might be using detailed APIs, and I might be making those API calls to a third party, but I'm controlling the front end. It's still my business. I want to control it all. So I need to be able to do both. Again, much heavier engineering investment on that case, but gives you much more capability in terms of actually controlling and tweaking what you're doing. But But it does lead to when you get into this discussion of, hey, I want to be able to start working on this and I want to start being able to tweak these as I go forward. One of the things we often talk about is configurability versus customization, right? And you can see the examples down below, which I really liked, by somebody who was a new dad. So he had car seats on his mind when he came up with this idea, but I thought it was great. A configurability is something you need just to be able to adapt. You want to go in there, you want to tweak, you want to make some changes to it, but you want to do it on the fly. You want to be able to measure and do it over and over. Whereas a custom solution may be a better fit, but you're going to have to make changes over time. And it's going to be expensive when you want to make those changes. Always good to be thinking about custom solutions, but at the end of the day, that's really where you want to try and avoid as much as possible, because as I said, eventually you're going to outgrow that customization. You're going to make a change, and if that change requires another run cycle, you're back to that same 6-month period. So you really want to think about, whenever you're making these changes, whenever you're trying to do this kind of transformation, how do I make it I'm on the left, that I'm configurable, and that I'm not on the right, that I'm not custom? Whatever I build, how do I make it so that if I want to make a change to it, I can just go in, or someone on our staff can go in and just tweak it and make the change and I'm done, versus open up an engineering project. It's something we look at every single day, and it's something a lot of companies tend to miss. They're like, oh, let's just build a custom solution. No, that's going to be it might be a good short-term, but it's going to be a troubling long-term solution. So in addition to configurability versus customization, there's the discussion of build buy. Not going to read this eye chart to you. You can take a look at it yourself. But a lot of things to think about in terms of, should I just build this all in-house myself? I can handle it, or should I buy something, or should I partner with somebody? And you really have to think about a number of things here, from compliance, right? Do I really want to take on the compliance pieces of this, or do I want to rely on people who are experts there? To security and reliability. A great example of that would be, let's say, web hosting. 10 years ago, big companies all would host their own data centers, right? And then over the years, people started discovering that people like, Amazon Web Services or Microsoft, they're pretty good at this. They do this for a living. They have people who eat, breathe, sleep this, hosting data centers, scalability, protection. Maybe going to the cloud is not such a bad idea or such a scary idea after all. So that's just a great example of the build buy approach and how it's changed over time, and how people's perceptions of it has changed over time. And then we mentioned earlier about innovation projects being hard. Partly due to, do I have the experience there? So, just as new channels come out there that you want to work with, do you have the experience to do that and you're going to build it in-house? Or do you need to rely on somebody who's an expert in that area? If you think about the payment types that are out there today, who would have thought that people would be using an Apple Pay or Google Pay online to make a payment, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. 10 years ago, there wasn't Apple Pay, Google Pay, right? Even 5 years ago, you wouldn't have even thought about that. And now there are people who are experts in that, and they know how to do that on a daily basis. So that's a couple of the considerations in terms of build versus buy. And we can actually talk you through that, and we actually have some resources on our website that can help you kind of make that decision in terms of when it's better to build versus buy. So I've rambled a lot here. I know I'm from the New York area, so I tend to talk really fast. Thankfully, the video's not on, so you can't see that I also talk with my hands a lot here. But let's kind of recap and take a breath and say, what have we really talked about here? And what we really said is, innovation's hard. That's the one problem, right? It's both really difficult and really important, right? To keep up with that consumer demand, to keep up with what's being expected in the market today. Again, it's no longer just a asking for, or even demand, it's an expectation from consumers of some of this digital transformation in the market. So the idea being, I need to try and find a way to get there, but I don't want to boil the ocean, right? I want to find a way to step my way through there, the crawl, walk, run approach, right? Can I find some quick wins? And I get something quick out there so I can say, look, here, we tested this, we threw it to market. It was just a few weeks worth of work. Let's see how it does. Let's learn from that. And by the way, let's capitalize that win and go, hey, did you see that small project that just saved us X dollars? If we now do the walk approach, we could save Y, and we've already proven it out by doing the crawl, right? And then the walk, and then ultimately, if necessary, moving to that run approach of, I've got the quick wins. I then took that next step to start tailoring this more to my business. I'm going to measure it and say, do I need to stop here? Or am I really looking to take that next big step and creating that next big project? So, again, I started with a commercial, I'll end with a quick commercial, right? But there's modern payments platforms such as PayNearMe that this is the idea, right? This is really what we do. This is really who we are. And we work with clients all across numerous industries to do just this. I mentioned this a moment ago, we actually have guides on our website that talk about what you should do when you're choosing a bill payment service provider, for example. Checklists for here are the things I should be considering. And again, that gets you not only to the looking at vendors checklist, but also the build versus buy checklist, right? Do I really want to invest this? Do I really want to build this myself? Or do I really want to partner with somebody? And as I said earlier, if you go to our website, the case studies that I referenced here, you can read those case studies for yourself. You can get much more detail on the merchants, what their real problems were, where they really had issues, and how they got there on this kind of crawl, walk, run approach, and where they saw those wins. So just a couple of resources for you to take a look at if you're interested. And that is, with that, I will actually stop. I will take a breath, which is unusual for me. Oh, I may have hit the wrong button there. So Marcy, if you can help me there. And we're on to questions at this point, which was the slide I was trying to bring up and did a bad job with. So Marcy, if you can take me back there, and we can see if anyone has any questions out there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Steve. The first question is, what are some example timeframes for crawl, walk, run? You said 2 weeks at one point, but is that realistic?
That's a good question. Is 2 weeks realistic? So I'm not I run our product team at PayNearMe, and I always kick our salespeople when they bring up that 2 week client that we did, because I go, that's not necessarily normal, but it is possible, right? And we have seen crawl measured in weeks. As little as 2, it's usually, a little bit more than that, 3-4 weeks usually to get going. Usually when you're in a walk approach, that's more of an interactive two-way communication. That's in projects we've done with some of our larger merchants. It's more of a 2 to 3 month period, 2 to 3 weeks, wow, 2 to 3 month time period. And then when you really want to get into that run approach, I mean, that's 3 months to 3 to 6 months plus, and it really depends on how complex you're trying to make it, which is why we kind of say, let's break it up into those pieces, because you don't want to wait the 6 months. Let's get some quick wins out there. And even in that 6 month approach, 3 to 6 months on a run, we'll see that, in 3 months you'll deliver X and then 6 Y, and then maybe you'll tweak it beyond that and continue to refine the project beyond there. So really rough guidelines. Obviously your mileage may vary. It depends on what your individual business is and your partners and what they can do for you.
Great, thank you, Steve. Another question is, what if you don't have any developers or technical people on staff?
Yeah, that's always a challenge, right? Either we have no technical people, or what we hear probably more often than that is, I've got technical people, they're all locked up for the remainder of 2021 on the roadmap we already had, so we can't help, right? And so things to look for when your development staff is that small, or you just don't have any available, is there, as I said earlier, that turnkey solution? Is there a way I can say, you know what, can I rely on a third party to stand up what I need? If I can just do one little thing, link over to it, or even in a call center, just reference a website or reference a phone number. Is there a way I can find, as I said earlier, that quick win where I can say, you stand up that, the piece I need, and I'll just reference it and link it to you? Or one of the other approaches we've seen is it an outbound approach? You know what, I'm going to partner with you as a third party, as a vendor on this technology solution. But instead of me changing my website or whatever, hey, can you run an engagement for me? Can you push out notifications to consumers, either text or email or both, or even pushes to a mobile wallet that talk about this new service, that talk about this transformation we just did, so that I don't have to do anything on my side from a technical resource standpoint. And we've seen that work as well. So a couple of different approaches you can do, always a challenge, and I think it's a challenge for everybody in the industry these days.
Thank you, Steve. Another question is, how do you keep compliance on board with this approach, especially with how fast it moves?
Yeah, always fun, right? Hey, we've got this digital transformation project. We would roll it out in 3 weeks, and then your legal and compliance department get in there and they go, no, you can't roll that out in 3 weeks. We have to start looking that over for you, right? A couple of different ways there, a couple of different approaches. One is really actually to vet out who you're working with and vet out who your partner is. And does your partner have the experience in this area where they can say either A, We have a compliance or risk or legal team on our side, so we can give you guidance there. We can tell you what we do that you can present to your teams as well. So you can compare and go, oh, okay, yeah, I see they've got it covered, or I see they've done this with some large industries in the past. So, they're able to kind of assure your compliance and risk teams that, yes, they've got this, they've handled it for large clients, they've got the certifications that are needed, whether it's PCI on the card side, whether they're getting NACHA audited on the ACH side, or in other industries, right? Are they meeting the compliance standards today? And can they present those to my compliance team? And the other piece of it really is, do they agree about a partnership between their compliance risk legal teams and mine? Or is it just a one-way street, right? We find that to be really important. It's usually not just a one-directional thing. It usually does need to be some type of partnership between the two, because your compliance team may not be experts in the area of the vendor is, and vice versa, right? So there needs to be a give and take for the two teams. So hopefully that answers the person's question.
Thank you. Does this work for other non-payments projects for other software?
Sure. We've seen this approach work for others as well. I focused on the payment space. One, it's where we are in PayNearMe, and we had some great case studies for you. But absolutely, right? And it really is that mindset of, how do I approach the large project, right? There's the old idiom, right, about how do you eat a whale, and the answer is one bite at a time, right? It's just, how do you chunk this up and say, you know what? Maybe I can find a quick win, get that out into the market, whether it's payments, whether it's a new back-end platform that I'm working on, whether it's a new partner that I'm going to integrate with on my servicing side. Any of those, where can I take a small piece, get the quick win, and then actually, if you're in a larger company, can present that up to the executives and go, here's what we've already achieved, here's what we've already won, let's take it to that next level.
Great, thank you so much, Steve. This looks like that's it for the Q&A. So I just want to say thank you to PayNearMe and Steve. Just remember, the slides and recording will be available on AFSA's website in the Webinar Resource Center. Steve, if you want to say any concluding statements, feel free.
No, just wanted to thank you, Marcy, for your help. Thank AFSA for inviting us here to the webinar. I hope this was useful to everyone here. And as I said, please see our website for more details on some of these approaches. So thanks again.
Thank you so much. This concludes today's webinar.